There's a force inside you, ancient, unshakable, quietly burning beneath everything you think you are. It's not loud. It doesn't beg for attention. But it's real. And it's waiting. Maybe you've felt it in flashes, in those moments. When everything falls apart and, somehow, you're still standing. Or when a single thought, a passing challenge, reignites something you thought had gone cold. You see, most people think they know their limits. They think they've measured their strength, drawn a map of their abilities, and learned where the edge is. But what if I told you, what you believe is just the beginning? That beneath the surface of doubt, exhaustion, and hesitation lies an ocean of potential, fierce, focused, and still untouched. There's a part of you that doesn't break. Not really. It might fall silent. It might fade into the background. But it never disappears. It's the part of you that kept walking when the path disappeared, that kept believing when the world gave you every reason not to. And here's the truth. You have barely scratched the surface of who you truly are. Too many people live their entire lives beneath a version of themselves that was never real to begin with, a shell built from fears, limitations, and the lies they were handed by others. But ask yourself, what if those limits were never yours? What if your fears weren't flaws, but signals, tests, designed to awaken what's already inside you? You think you know what you're made of. You don't. Not yet. Because right underneath all the noise, the overthinking, the self-doubt, the distractions, there's another version of you. One that is calm, clear, unshaken. And that version, it's rooted in the kind of deep, quiet strength the Stoics wrote about. The kind that doesn't shout. It stands. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And today, we're going there, not to some motivational high, but to something deeper. The real foundation. The core dot, so if even a small part of you is ready to stop questioning and start becoming, stay. This video might just be the spark that reignites your flame. One small favor before we dive in. If this message resonates with you, if this feels like the kind of space where you want to grow, consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Now, let's get into it. Why do you think you doubt yourself? Not because you're incapable, not because you're broken, but maybe, just maybe, because somewhere along the way, you forgot how much you've already survived, and how much you've already quietly conquered. And remember, what we call doubt rarely comes from weakness. It comes from disconnection, from forgetting the quiet, powerful version of you that's always been there, showing up day after day, even when no one clapped. It's the part of you that got out of bed when everything felt impossibly heavy. The part that kept walking forward even when your mind screamed at you to stop. That smiled at strangers while carrying silent battles no one could see. As if you were holding up the sky for everyone but yourself. Most people never recognize that strength in themselves. Not because it isn't there, but because they've been taught not to see it. You weren't born unsure. You didn't come into this world doubting your worth. You learned hesitation, slowly, subtly, like a second language. Maybe it began in school, maybe at home, or maybe just by watching the way others were punished for daring to stand out. You were told, quietly and over time, to tone it down, to play it safe, to not expect too much, to stay in line. It's not your fault. But here's the hard truth now. It is your responsibility to unlearn it. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So let me ask you, what have you been repeating? Second-guessing your instincts, dismissing your voice before it even speaks, shrinking yourself to make others comfortable? But beneath all of that noise, under the static of fear and comparison, there's always been another voice, a quieter one. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg for attention, but it speaks. In stillness, in silence, in those rare moments, when the distractions fall away and something inside whispers, "This isn't all I am. I was made for more than this." Have you ever felt that? Not as arrogance, but as truth? And if that voice has survived all the years of overthinking, all the fear you've buried it under, then so has the strength that carried you through it all. You've endured more than you give yourself credit for. You've lived through nights when quitting would have been easier, days when you held a storm inside and still showed up the next morning, smiling like the sky was clear. That's not weakness. That's resilience. That's grit. That's proof. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And here's the truth. You've been choosing all along, even in silence. And those quiet choices, they are shaping who you're becoming. The real problem isn't your lack of confidence. It's your lack of memory. You've simply forgotten your own evidence. Forgotten the strength hidden in the quiet, thankless days when you still kept going. When you adjusted, when you healed, even in fragments, when you moved forward, even when nothing made sense. And here's what often gets overlooked. Your strength never disappeared. It just got ignored. Ignored because somewhere along the way, we were taught or trained, even to trust criticism more than capability, to accept judgment as truth, and to dismiss compliments as flattery, to downplay our wins, to shrink in the face of our own growth. And over time, that repetition builds a quiet, convincing narrative. I'm not enough, even when all the evidence says otherwise. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But maybe it's the unexamined self where most of our suffering begins. Because if you never stop to reflect, never pause long enough to truly see all the storms you've already walked through, then how could you possibly believe in what you're capable of next? There was a time when you felt invincible, not because life was easy or perfect, but because, back then, you were still deeply connected to something unshakable. Maybe you were a kid, fearless, unapologetic, alive, running without hesitation, speaking without shame. Or maybe it was just one fleeting moment, in the middle of chaos, where something inside you stood tall and unbreakable. That wasn't arrogance. That wasn't pride. That was clarity. That was you, and that spark. It didn't vanish. It didn't burn out. It simply got buried under the weight of opinions you never asked for, the criticisms you didn't deserve, and the failures you mistook for definitions. Life got loud. The world demanded too much, and in the noise, the fog, the pressure, the constant expectations, you just stopped hearing yourself. But let's be honest, you didn't lose your fire. You just stopped feeding it. And fire, real fire, the kind that lives in your chest and refuses to die quietly. It doesn't go out just because things got hard, not after one setback, not after 1,000. It waits, it smolders, it pulls back, not because it's gone, but because it's giving you space to remember it was never gone in the first place. And all it takes is a choice, not some loud, dramatic turning point, just a quiet, steady decision to believe again, not in some perfect, polished version of yourself, but in the core that's always been there, steady, even when forgotten. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." That invincibility you once felt, it wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't a phase. It was your heart speaking clearly, before the world gave you 1,000 reasons to doubt. So maybe the time has come, not to chase more validation out there, but to search for recognition inside. You are not starting over. You are returning. You are not broken. You are simply buried beneath stories that were never yours to carry. Let them go. Reclaim that voice, the one that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful, the one that quietly, firmly whispers, "I am not done. I am just." And as you begin to hear that quiet voice again, the one that says, "I'm not done," it's important to remember this. The loudest person in the room, they're rarely the strongest. We've been fooled into believing that volume equals power, but more often than not, it's just a mask, a disguise for insecurity. True strength doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't demand attention. It moves without announcement. It doesn't ask to be seen, because it's too busy building. Real confidence isn't showy. It doesn't need a stage or an audience. It's steady, it's quiet, and most of all, it's completely unmoved by who's watching. It's not the one making a scene. It's the one making progress. But somewhere along the way, you were taught a different lesson, that if no one notices your growth, it doesn't count. That if you don't post about it, it didn't happen. But that's not growth. That's performance. Confidence isn't about proving anything. It's about knowing something. And when you know, truly and deeply, you don't need applause. You just keep showing up. Day after day. When the spotlight's gone. When no one's cheering. When it's just you and the work. That's where real power forms. That's where it takes shape. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power," and I'd take it one step further, especially when no one's watching. Because here's the truth. The world will notice, eventually, but the version of you that needs to notice first is you. So if you're out there building something, and nobody sees it yet, good. Let them miss it. Let them scroll past. Let them underestimate you. Let your silence confuse them. Let your discipline unsettle them. One day, they'll ask, "How did you get there?" And by then your answer will already be written in the results. Now be honest. How many times have you told yourself, I'll try? When I'm ready, maybe you didn't say it out loud, but you felt it, that nagging thought. I just need more confidence. I need more experience. I need to feel fully prepared. But readiness, it's not something that knocks on your door. It doesn't arrive with fanfare, like a guest announcing its arrival. Readiness is something you build, not by thinking about it, but by doing. You don't wait to feel ready before you act. You act, and through that action, you become ready. Every person you admire, every story that left you inspired, none of them began with certainty. They started with hesitation. They stepped forward in fear, but they didn't let fear call the shots. They moved anyway, and in that movement, they became. As Aristotle said, we learn by doing, not by waiting, not by doubting, but by engaging fully with the very thing that terrifies us. Because fear, it's clever. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it sounds practical. And that's the trick, isn't it? Fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it wears a calm, reasonable voice. Just wait for a better time. Gather more information first. Get a bit more experience, more approval, more certainty. But what if all of that is just fear, speaking with a polished accent? What if that hesitation isn't protecting you? It's paralyzing you, because the future version of you, the one who is more grounded, more confident, more fulfilled, isn't waiting for perfect timing. It's calling you now, from this very place, right here where you feel the most unsure. So if you're scared, good. That means you're alive. That means you're standing on the edge of something that matters. Discomfort isn't a red flag. It's a signal. It means you're at the boundary, the thin, trembling line between who you've been and who you're becoming. And here's the part no one tells you. You don't wait to become worthy of change. You act your way into it. Worthiness doesn't get handed to you like a gift. It's earned. In the chaos, in the mess, in the trenches of uncertainty, in the moments when nothing is guaranteed and you show up anyway. You don't find your confidence and then decide to take action. You take action while still scared, while still doubting, and through that process, you become confident. But here's the cost of ignoring that. Every time you say, I can't, your nervous system listens. It doesn't argue, it doesn't check the facts, it just obeys. Your body tenses, your breath gets shallow, your mind starts shrinking its expectations. And if you say it enough, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, it's probably too late for me. That doesn't just become a belief, it becomes a blueprint. One your behavior will follow, no questions asked. That's what makes doubt so dangerous. It doesn't scream. It whispers. Gently, casually, almost like a friend. Maybe I'm just not built for this. I've never been good at that. It's probably too late anyway. It sounds like your voice. It feels like logic. But it's not. It's fear. Fear in disguise. And its favorite trick. Slipping past your guard by pretending it's being reasonable. But what if, just for a moment, you started treating your thoughts as suggestions, not truths? What if you didn't panic, but got curious? Carl Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious. It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The truth is, most of us are being led by thoughts we never chose, ideas we never examined, beliefs we never challenged. They were passed down by parents, teachers, culture, voices that eventually became our inner voice. Long before we even knew we had the right to question them. So the next time that inner voice whispers, "You're not enough," pause. Don't absorb it. Don't take it as truth. Instead, ask yourself, whose voice is that, really? Is it a worn-out version of you, speaking from a place of exhaustion? Or is it a memory, someone else's projection from years ago that never truly left your system? Because once you identify the source, you weaken its grip. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing your thoughts. You are the thinker, not the thought itself. And that means you have power, not power to control every single thought that enters your mind. No one does. But the power to choose which ones stay, which ones you listen to, which ones you build your life around. Your mind is a space, a sacred one. And, just like any home, it collects clutter. Fear, self-doubt, shame. They pile up quietly when left unchecked. But here's the good news. You can clean it. You can restore clarity. You can create mental order by being intentional, by replacing noise with truth, assumptions with curiosity, judgment with understanding. Your power begins the moment you stop being an echo and start being the editor, the author, the one who chooses the script, not just blindly repeats the one handed to you by someone else's fear. And then there's the scroll, the endless scroll. You stare at screens filled with people achieving, building, glowing with success, perfectly filtered snapshots of their lives. And without meaning to, you start shrinking, not physically, but internally, emotionally. You compare their victories to your doubts, their milestones to your mess, their curated, polished highlight reels to your unfiltered, behind-the-scenes chaos. And suddenly, you feel like you're falling behind in a race you didn't even know you were running. But here's the truth. Comparison is a thief. It doesn't just steal your joy. It takes your focus, your gratitude, your forward momentum. And in return, it hands you anxiety, envy, and a creeping sense of not enoughness. And the worst part? Most of what you're comparing yourself to isn't even real. You're measuring your full, complex humanity, your doubts, struggles, scars, against someone else's edited glimpse. You're comparing your journey to their presentation. It's an unfair fight from the start. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed the good life wasn't about how much you owned, but how well you lived. Epictetus taught that we should never tie our worth to things beyond our control, especially not to other people's achievements. He said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And yet, we hand over our inner and every time we use someone else's progress as a ruler for our own. We trade away just a little more of our peace. But here's what you need to hear. You are not behind. You're not late. You are simply on your path, a path with its own rhythm, its own pace, its own lessons. You were never meant to match anyone else's timeline. You were never built to follow someone else's formula. Aristotle believed that each person has a unique purpose, a telos. Trying to live someone else's purpose is like planting an oak tree and expecting it to bloom like a rose. It's not wrong. It's just not you. The only competition that actually matters is with the version of yourself you were yesterday. So ask yourself, are you learning? Are you growing? Are you trying, even just a little? If the answer is yes, then you're not falling behind. You're evolving. And let's be real, progress that's measured in self-awareness and quiet. Consistent steps is far more meaningful than any spotlight moment you could ever post online. What you think you need right now probably isn't more motivation. It's not another pep talk, not a louder mantra, not even another goal. What you really need is memory, a quiet, honest remembering of everything you've already survived. Because if you could see your own past clearly, really look, you'd realize just how much you've made it through. The days that cracked you open but didn't destroy you. The nights when doubt kept you up, tight in your chest, and you still woke up, still showed up, still carried on, even when quitting would have been the easier choice. That's your resume, not your job titles, not your follower count, not your performance metrics. Your proof lies in your perseverance. Resilience isn't some rare trait only a chosen few are born with. It's a decision you make over and over again. It's the choice to keep going when everything inside you screams, stop. And you respond, calmly, quietly, not yet. Resilience is forged in the fires of fatigue. It's refined under the weight of fear, and it's proven not in your wins, but in how you face your losses. Plato once said, courage is knowing what not to fear, but maybe real courage is fearing it all and walking forward anyway. You're stronger than you feel, not because someone said so, but because you've lived strength in moments no one saw. The kind of strength that doesn't get posted, the kind that doesn't win awards, the kind that lives in silence, behind closed doors. In hard hours, on days you thought you wouldn't survive, but did. That's where real confidence is born. Not in speeches. Not in confidence doesn't begin with applause. It begins with your ability to rise one more time after life has tried to knock you flat. Real confidence isn't something you build when things are easy. It's something you earn in the dark, in the quiet, uncertain hours when no one's watching and everything feels heavy, because your mind is both a battlefield and a sanctuary. It can be the place where chaos multiplies, or the soil where clarity takes root. It's not just where your thoughts reside. It's where your future is built. And often, it's not the actual problems that undo you. It's the story your mind tells about them, the interpretation, the fear, the subtle spin, the assumption that says, this will always happen to me. That's where the spiral begins. Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. But here's the question. What about the unexamined thought? That one sentence you repeat without even noticing. I'm not ready. They're better than me. Why does this always happen to me? Those quiet phrases, when left unchecked, become the silent script you start living out. Not because they're true, but because they've become familiar. But you can reclaim the gate. You don't have to let every thought stroll into your mind and set up camp. You can become the gatekeeper, the one who decides what stays, what gets questioned, what gets rewritten, and that starts in stillness, not silence, but awareness. The ability to pause, to create space between the stimulus and the response, between the thought and the belief. Begin to audit your beliefs, not to judge them, but to understand them. Where did they come from? Who handed them to you? Do they reflect truth? Or are they just old programming still running in the background? Carl Jung once warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But facing your mind, that's the beginning of freedom. It's not glamorous, but it is liberating. Start by cleaning your mental language. Talk to yourself like someone you're responsible for. Journal, not to impress yourself, but to see yourself clearly. Stop writing what you hope is true. Start writing what is, so you can move with intention toward what can be. Don't just feed your mind with more content. Train it with discipline. Practice thinking. Practice noticing. Practice replacing. Because a trained mind, it doesn't panic when a challenge appears. It pauses. It doesn't react to every opinion it hears. It filters. It doesn't obsess over control. It seeks clarity. A trained mind won't just guide you through real challenges. It will protect you from the worst ones of all, the ones you invent. Because somewhere along the way, you tied your worth to outcomes. The job offer, the number, the applause. You looked to results like they were mirrors, hoping they'd reflect back the validation you've been chasing for years. And when they didn't, you started shrinking. You assumed that if the result wasn't impressive, you must not be either. But here's the truth. Outcomes are liars. They don't always tell the full story. They're shaped by timing, by luck, by 1,000 variables beyond your control. And if you build your self-worth on them, you'll collapse with them, too. One win will never feel like enough. One failure will feel like a final verdict. And you'll stay trapped in a cycle, chasing your value through things that were never meant to define you. The Stoics saw this clearly, long before algorithms or awards. Marcus Aurelius didn't measure his life by military victories or Senate praise. He measured it by virtue, by whether his choices came from integrity, not impulse. They believed power didn't lie in outcomes, but in process. Epictetus said, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens, happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy." That's not passivity. That's peace. You are not your wins. You are not your losses. You are who you are, in the face of both. You are the effort, not the echo, the decision, not the result. Detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means not caring. But real detachment, it means you care deeply. You just don't collapse when things don't go your way. You give your best. You commit with everything you have. But you don't let the outcome define your identity. That's not apathy. That's mastery. You can love something and still let go of the outcome. You can give your all and still be okay if it doesn't land. That's the kind of strength that doesn't shake with the world around you, because it's anchored in something deeper, internal stability. You don't need to leap. That's the myth that transformation arrives in one sweeping movie moment. A dramatic scene with music swelling and everything changing overnight. But real life doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't come in one big act. It's made of small, quiet ones, honest ones, unseen ones. You don't need to see the entire staircase. You just need to take the next step, the one that's right in front of you, the one that feels scary. But real courage, it doesn't always look heroic. It's not always a grand speech. It's not always a bold confrontation. Sometimes, true, courage is a whisper, saying no when every part of you wants to say yes just to be accepted. Sometimes, it's writing one honest sentence when self-doubt screams, delete it. Sometimes, it's as simple and as profound as putting your feet on the floor. Facing a day when every cell in your body wants to disappear. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." And that victory, it doesn't arrive all at once. It's built through quiet, repeated decisions to act in truth. Even when fear is louder, you don't rewrite your identity in a single moment. You build it slowly, by becoming someone slightly stronger than you were yesterday. And every time you do, every time you take that small, honest step, something subtle but powerful shifts. You begin to see yourself differently, not as the one who always hesitates, but as the one who moves anyway. And that changes everything. Because identity shapes action, and action reinforces identity. It becomes a loop. A loop you control. So ask yourself, who are you when no one's watching, when there's no audience, no recognition waiting at the end, no praise, no reward. Just you, your choices, and the silence that surrounds them. That's where self-respect is born, not under stage lights, but in shadows, not in performance, but in presence, in living moment by moment with quiet integrity. It's easy to look strong when eyes are on you. It's easy to speak well when applause follows. But the real transformation, it happens when you choose the right thing even when no one will ever know. When your actions align with your values, not because someone might see, but because you see, because you know. And that knowing, that internal compass, becomes your foundation. Socrates said, "The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts." But the soul is also dyed by your habits, the quiet choices you make when there's nothing to gain. No spotlight waiting. That's what builds your inner architecture. You don't create trust in yourself by talking big. You build it by being consistent in the dark, by following through on the promises you make to yourself in private. Because that kind of consistency, that quiet loyalty to your own principles, that's where unshakable self-respect is born. Not when others are watching, but when you've trained yourself to show up without needing an audience. Because once your strength becomes internal, you stop performing, you stop chasing approval, you stop proving, you simply are. And when that happens, when your confidence is rooted in something deeper, even the loudest criticism starts to sound like static, just background noise, temporary, powerless, unimportant. So stop shrinking. Stop folding yourself. into smaller versions just to keep others comfortable. Stop tucking away your ideas, your brilliance, your ambition, as if they were something to apologize for. They're not. Wanting more for your life is not selfish. Reaching further is not. Arrogance, having a vision doesn't make you threatening. It makes you clear, because that hunger inside you, it's not ego, it's clarity. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that striving meant stepping on others, that confidence made you too much, that speaking up was rude, that dreaming big was dangerous. But hear this clearly, that was never about you. That was about their comfort and real humility. It doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to stay rooted. It doesn't mean hiding your gifts. It means offering them with grace. Socrates once said, to find yourself, think for yourself. And when you finally do, you'll realize that humility doesn't mean stepping back. It means stepping forward without needing to be the loudest. In the room. Courage isn't about volume. It's about presence. It's about choosing to live aligned with your values, your truth, your direction, even when that path is unpopular, even when it feels heavy. You don't need to draw attention to yourself, but you do need to stop pretending your voice doesn't matter, because it does, deeply. You weren't made to fade into the background. You were made to build, to speak, to model what quiet integrity looks like in a noisy world. And no, that doesn't mean being loud, aggressive, or dramatic. It means being grounded. It means acting with calm conviction. It means showing up with intention and standing firm in your truth without needing anyone's permission. You don't need praise to be powerful. You don't need a standing ovation to be significant. Your worth isn't measured by applause. It's measured by how faithfully you show up for the things that matter most, day after day. Fear was never the enemy. The real threat is how tightly you grip it, how often you believe it without asking if it's even telling the truth, how silently you let it guide your choices without ever asking where it's taking you. Fear only grows when left unquestioned. Sometimes the strongest part of you doesn't roar. It doesn't shout over doubt or fear. It lives in silence, in the rooms of your mind you've avoided, in the stories you've told yourself but never questioned. So now, it's time to challenge those stories. Sit with your fear. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Talk to it. Ask yourself, gently but honestly, what am I really afraid of? Not in a vague, sweeping way. Be precise. Is it the fear of failing, of being misunderstood, of starting over, and having to admit that the path you once fought so hard for no longer fits who you're becoming? Because most of what we call fear isn't life-threatening. It's ego-threatening. It's the discomfort of change, the tension of uncertainty, the terror of being seen in ways you can't control. But ironically, that is exactly where your growth is hiding. Carl Jung once said, "Where your fear is, there is your task." Fear is not the enemy. It's not a stop sign. It's a spotlight. It shines directly on the areas of your life that are still governed by limits instead of freedom. It exposes where your old rules are no longer serving you. So if something both scares you and excites you, pay attention. That's not anxiety. That's potential knocking on your door. And if you've been living in a loop where everything feels familiar, safe, predictable chances are you're not growing, not really, because growth doesn't mean fear disappears. It means you're willing to take the next step despite fear. It means walking into the unknown with shaky hands, but a steady heart. So stop waiting to feel fearless. That day doesn't arrive wrapped in certainty. Instead, learn to walk with fear beside you, not behind you, not under you, but shoulder to shoulder. Let it point the way, not dictate your steps. Let it educate you, not imprison you. Now, let's talk about something often misunderstood: discipline. Discipline isn't punishment. It's not some rigid set of rules meant to drain your joy or kill spontaneity. In fact, real discipline is freedom. It's the quiet structure that gives shape to chaos. It's the internal rhythm that holds you steady when life spins too fast. Think about it. When your mind wants to drift, but you train it to focus. When your body resists movement, but you move anyway. When comfort whispers quit and you stay the course. That's not restriction. That's self-trust in action. Discipline is how you tell your nervous system, "We've got this." And that creates peace. A deep, unshakable peace. Because when the world around you feels out of control, your steady effort becomes an anchor. Motivation? It's a guest, a spark, a rush of energy that comes and goes. But discipline, that's the foundation. It's what remains when inspiration fades. It's what holds you up when your confidence falters. Discipline is the quiet builder of self-worth, not based on mood, not dependent on external rewards, but rooted in the daily choices you commit to when no one's watching. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So make your habits sacred, not rigid, not performative, but intentional. Let your routines become your anchors, the quiet rhythms that hold you steady when everything else feels uncertain. Because on those foggy days, when doubt whispers louder than clarity, when you forget who you are, your habits will remember. For you, they'll speak in your actions and say, "I know who I am because I keep showing up." That more than anything is what discipline truly is. A daily act of self-respect. A quiet vow to yourself that says, "I will not abandon me." And maybe you've been waiting to feel ready, waiting for the fear to go away, waiting for a green light from the world that says, "Now you may begin." But readiness doesn't arrive like a letter in the mail. It's not a mood or a moment. It's a muscle, and you build it by stepping forward even when your legs shake. The truth is, you're already becoming, not in some grand, cinematic way, but in the quiet moments. The moments you chose effort over excuse, patience over impulse, integrity over ease. The decisions no one saw, but that shaped you anyway. You see, the version of yourself you admire, the one who walks with grounded confidence, clarity, and calm. They're not far away. They're not a fantasy. They're already within you, waiting to be uncovered. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You don't need to become someone new. You just need to stop running from who you've always been. That truest version of you. It's already close, one choice away. One moment of courage. One step in the direction you keep delaying. And when you stop underestimating that truth, when you finally own the fact that growth is already unfolding inside you. Everything shifts. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You stop waiting. You start walking. You begin acting like the person you've always been capable of becoming. And once you do that, there's no going back. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming, in every quiet, steady, powerful way, your future self will one day thank you for. So don't stop now. Because the strength you're building in silence today is going to speak louder than anything you've ever said out loud. If this video touched something real in you, there's another one waiting on your screen right now. Take that as your next step. And if you found value here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Capsule, a space for growth, purpose, and the kind of power that doesn't need to shout. We're just getting started.